Hello and welcome back to CQ, the AWS Certification Quiz Show brought to you live at Sydney Summit 2019. Here we are, afternoon of day 3, day 2 of Summit, back with CQ. So we're going to be looking at the Certified SysOps Administrator exam this afternoon, and with me today, so pleased to introduce him, I have Sander. Sander, tell us a bit more about what you do at AWS.
Hey MJ, thanks for having me. I'm a technical trainer here in Sydney, and obviously I train a lot of our customers on how to use our platform.
So you're ready for some questions today, Sander?
Yeah, ready. Let's go.
If you check him out on the Twitch channel, twitch.tv/AWS, Sander actually did our first episode with us, so he's an old hand at this, he's got this. And just a quick note, we're using the official study guide from wiley.com, also available at amazon.com. We've got John with us to go through the poll. He'll shoot any questions through to myself and Sander, and also keep an eye on the answers coming through. Ready, Sander?
Yep.
First question of the day, Redshift. Which of the following use cases is well suitable for Amazon Redshift? One answer only. Sander.
All right, so the way I approach these type of questions is you need to know what the service is. So I'm going to describe the service in a little bit of detail. So what is Redshift? Redshift is our petabyte scale data warehouse service. Great for analytics, performing analytics over large amounts of data.
Yep.
So with that in mind, let's have a look at some of the answers on the that we have up here. So the first one is a 500 terabyte data warehouse used for market analytics. Well, based on the description I just gave, that looks like a really good answer.
Yeah.
I mentioned a petabyte scale data warehouse, 500 terabyte, that fits perfectly into that.
Getting up there, yep.
So I'm going to mark that as a potential answer.
Okay.
But we're going to look at the other answers just in case there's something that could be potentially better.
Okay, number 2.
All right, so a NoSQL unstructured data workload. Well, Redshift is a relational database. So this particular answer, a NoSQL database, non-relational database, it doesn't suit Redshift. Okay. So typically the service that you would use for this is DynamoDB.
Yep.
All right, so we can cross that off as the incorrect answer. The next one, a high traffic e-commerce web application. So for this particular use case, you'd use an OLTP type database. Typically, you'd use something like the RDS offering that we have. So we offer a number of database engines our customers are already using, so things like Postgres, MySQL, MS SQL. So that would be a better fit for that. So that's an incorrect answer for Redshift. Okay. And then lastly, an in-memory cache. Now, Redshift is not an in-memory cache. There is a hard disk in the back end where we store the data. If we're talking about in-memory caches, typically you'd look at something like Elasticache, where we offer Redis or Memcached, depending on what the customers want to use. Okay. So that's the incorrect answer. We'll lock in number 1.
Number 1 from Sander. John, how's the poll looking?
The poll is also agreeing. Number 1's looking popular.
1 it is.
Oh, I got it right.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Good to know you still got it, Sander. All right, question 2, high availability. You have an AWS Direct Connect to connect to your data center to AWS. You have one Amazon VPC. You are worried that the connection is not redundant. Your company is going to implement a redundant AWS Direct Connect connection in the coming months. Whew.
Can you say that again?
No.
I didn't quite catch it.
What can you suggest to management as an intermediate backup to a redundant AWS Direct Connect connection?
All right, so let's define what a Direct Connect is.
Please do.
Sure. So Direct Connect is basically a private link between, say, your on-prem data center and your Amazon VPC or VPCs. Yep. Typically, customers will use this when they want to have a private link between the on-prem data center and VPC. Okay. So if they have compliance requirements for data not to flow over the internet, they can use this particular Direct Connect. Okay. Now, typically, you provision this through a third party, one of our partners. So typically a telco. They'll come and provision that link for you to one of our termination points, and then we'll plumb the connection into our infrastructure or your VPC. Another great thing about Direct Connects is the data transfer out charge is actually a lot less than data transfer out from EC2 to the internet. So it can be a very cost-effective solution if you're doing a lot of data.
Okay.
All right, so with that in mind, let's have a look at some of the answers here. So the first one, recommend that your management team speed up the implementation of Direct Connect. Well, that technically, yeah, that could be an acceptable answer. But really, the question's asking us here, what can we do right now to give us some
Immediate.
redundancy?
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be a better answer. So we'll
Okay.
mark this and we'll move on.
As a possible.
Possible, yeah. We'll flag that answer.
What about number 2, do nothing?
Do nothing.
I like that.
Do you? Do you like doing nothing? Direct Connect is redundant if you use two routers. So if you're using 2 routers on-prem, you'll be redundant from the point of view that the hardware that you're using. If one of the routers fails, yes, the other router will be able to pick up that load.
Yeah.
But the single point of failure here is the actual Direct Connect. Because if the Direct Connect, the provider that you're using, experiences an issue, potentially,
Sure.
that link can go down. So that's not a correct answer.
Okay.
So number 3, create a VPN between your data center and VPC. That sounds really good to me. So you can create a VPN or an IPsec tunnel between your on-prem data center and your VPC.
Everything in the question.
Pretty much, and because there's no requirement here for the traffic is allowed to flow over the internet, we can provision that VPN, and we're meeting the requirements in this case.
Okay.
So the last one, we can rule that out, create another VPC. All that does is create another private network in
Yeah.
AWS. When you provision a VPC, by default it has no connection to anything. So even if we were to connect it to on-prem, we'd have to use that same Direct
Yeah.
Connect. So
So
I think
not
we'll lock
needed.
in number 3.
Number 3 locked in, John. How's the poll looking?
Well, our viewers are not very highly available. They're spread all over the place, actually.
Okay.
Multiple availability answers. Let's see what it is.
3 it is, John.
3. We did have some.
37% online, got it. Come on, we can do better.
can do better.
Our online viewers. Let's move on to question 3. Ready, Sander?
Sure, MJ.
Got a 1-sentence question for once.
Oh!
Woohoo! What is the primary use case of Amazon Kinesis Firehose?
All right, so Kinesis, a really great service. It's used for ingesting large amounts of data. So
Okay.
think big data.
Yep.
Think clickstream data that you want to ingest, data from IoT devices, that sort of thing, social
Okay.
media feeds. Now the question here is around Kinesis Firehose. Kinesis Firehose, the particular capability that this one offers is it ingests data,
Yep.
but it puts it into, say, storage, back-end services like S3,
Okay.
Redshift, as well as Elasticsearch, and we actually support Splunk now as well.
Nice.
So we've probably answered it, but let's have a look at the answers. So number 1, ingest huge streams of data. That sounds like Kinesis to me.
Yep.
And allow custom processing of data in flight. Now, Kinesis Firehose does allow you to transform some of the data as it comes in. So you can run a Lambda function and transform some of the data,
Okay.
but it doesn't really do custom processing. You're probably better off to use something like Kinesis Data Streams, where you can send that
Yeah.
data to EMR, Elastic MapReduce,
Sure.
and process that data. So I'm going to mark that one as incorrect and move on to the next one.
But we like the first part, right?
Yeah, and if we look at the next answer, ingest huge streams of data, Kinesis, and pretty much what I was talking about before, storing it in S3,
Yep.
Redshift, Elasticsearch,
Everything you
and
mentioned.
Splunk. So that looks correct. So we'll mark that, but we'll look
But
at the
let's
other
double
ones.
check.
Yeah. So the last 2 generate a huge stream of data from S3 or DynamoDB. So Kinesis as such doesn't really generate that stream of data. You have to have producers that produce that data.
Okay.
So we can knock those ones off as incorrect. So I'd like to lock in number 2.
Number 2, John.
Number 2, we had a lot of people going for number 3. That does look about right because it does send data to S3, but it doesn't generate the data.
Correct.
So I can understand some misguided attempts there. If it is number 2,
2 it
indeed.
is.
And of course, Kinesis has several options. We've got Kinesis Data, Kinesis Firehose,
Yep.
Kinesis Video, and Kinesis Analytics for SQL manipulation.
Cool.
Alrighty, moving on. Question 4, CloudFormation. An AWS CloudFormation template was used to deploy the resources used for your application. The resources are no longer needed. However, you need to keep the data for your Amazon RDS instance. How can you clean up the resources while preventing the database from being deleted?
All right, great question. So CloudFormation, that's our infrastructure as code service.
Okay,
So basically you can turn all your infrastructure into code into a nice little template, and you can just deploy that however you want to and make changes to it.
Okay.
Now the key thing here is automation.
Yeah.
Right? It's all about automation. So keep that in mind when we look at these answers. So the first one, manually delete all resources except RDS. Well, that's not really automating things, right? Potentially we could have hundreds of resources in our CloudFormation stack. Do we really want to go in and delete every single resource?
Okay.
It's going to take time. It's a possible answer, but I don't think it's a good one.
Okay, next.
So, next one, update the stack directly and remove all resources from the template except the RDS instance. Now you can go into the template and make some changes. Again, it's not really the best way to do it.
Okay.
Particularly if you have a lot of dependencies in that template, that could cause some problems. I'm going to say no to that and move on to the next one.
Get rid of that one. Number 3.
Number 3, it's looking really good. Set a deletion policy attribute for the RDS instance to retain on delete and take a snapshot as well. So that is something that CloudFormation does support.
Yep.
You can set that deletion policy attribute. What will happen is it'll delete everything in that particular stack and then template, except for anything you specified in that deletion policy attribute.
So that sounds pretty good.
Sounds really good. So we'll mark that.
Glad you agree with me,
Yeah,
Sander.
no.
But let's quickly check number 4.
let's check
Always
number
worth
4.
checking.
It's not possible to retain resources when deleting a stack. Well, we've already established that it is possible to retain resources, so that's incorrect. So John will lock in number 3, please.
Okay. And everybody agrees with you.
100%. Nice explanation
I must have trained
as
them,
well.
I reckon. So, yeah.
Maybe they were trained by you yourself. I like that. All right.
Some
3
good,
it is.
good training there.
All right, last question for Sander today, everyone, on monitoring and metrics. To monitor API calls against AWS, use insert to capture the history of API requests and use insert to respond to operational changes in real time. What are the 2 right inserts?
Okay, so let's just jump straight to the answer here.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, to the answers. So, let's
Well,
look
straight away online, they're all going for number 3.
Are they?
Yeah.
Well, they're correct.
Awesome. Do you want to explain
Why are they
Sander?
correct?
Is that all right with you?
All right, so in the interest of time, so CloudTrail
You're fine.
is a service that we use to log every API call in the account.
Yeah.
So,
To capture the history of API requests?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Probably should have said that. All right, so it's a great service. I always recommend to my students to enable that. If you're using a production, you have to enable that. It's great for auditing, for its auditing capabilities.
Perfect.
CloudWatch events, so certain services, they'll publish events to CloudWatch.
Yeah.
So for example, say an EC2 instance, when it starts or stops, it publishes an event to CloudWatch. You can then have, say, a Lambda function which gets triggered to do something, or you could have a SNS notification triggered to email you. So I'm going to go with people online.
You mean you're sounding pretty confident, Sander?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, John, let's reveal the last answer
Oh, I
for
wonder what it
Sander.
will be, and it is CloudWatch events.
But we did have some drop-offs in the end
we
from
had
the poll, so
They didn't
interesting
listen too
times.
clearly.
Sander, it's always great to have you with me. Thank you
you.
so much for joining us for the SysOps certification today. Join us later this afternoon for a very special guest on CQ, and stay tuned for some more awesome talks. Thank
See ya.
you.